Start the recording. So this is chapter 3, operations strategy. So let's take a look at kind of the learning objectives for the chapter, explain how organizations seek to gain a competitive advantage, what is a competitive advantage, explain approaches for understanding customers' wants and needs, describe how customers evaluate goods and services. How do they do that? Explain the 5 key competitive priorities that all companies have. Explain the role of organizations' management, sustainability, and also operations in strategic planning. And then the last piece is describe Hill's framework for operations strategy. So a lot of key terms in here. Competitive advantage, order qualifiers, order winners, different types of attributes, search, experience, and credence attributes, competitive priorities, mass customization, innovation, strategy, core competencies, operations strategy, design, infrastructure, multinational enterprises. So those of you who have some background in some other courses, for example, if you've had principles of management, BMGT 1327, or if you have had possibly quality, or if you have had supervision, or even business principles, you probably got a little bit of background on strategy. So strategy is really important, because if you change your strategy, many times that can change the entire company, can it not? So they kick off talking about Xerox on page 59. Of course, Xerox is kind of the copy people, known for copy machines, but we don't use copy machines as much as we used to because of digitalization. So they mention here that Xerox has had to kind of reinvent itself, kind of come up with a new mission, a new vision, a new strategy. So they branched out into other businesses like commercial information technology, document outsourcing, finance, human resources, transportation, even healthcare. And by the way, when it comes to survival of a company or an organization, that is job number one. Most people, if I ask them what's the main driving force behind any organization, and people usually will say a profit. Well, yes and no. Their really driving force is to survive. And so they will do anything just to continue drawing another breath and continue as a company. So you see this classically with Xerox. They've gone from being a copy machine company to transportation and healthcare, simply because they want to continue to survive. The number one objective of all organizations. So competitive advantage, which is discussed on your page 60, a company's ability to achieve market and financial superiority over its competitors. That means they can run faster, deliver better products than whoever is next to them in terms of a competitor. They're doing a better job at it. They have a competitive advantage. It does require 2 things that are mentioned here. One is understanding customer needs and expectations. This is the whole idea of being close to your customer, knowing what your customer wants, even anticipating what the customer is going to want or need next, whether they even know it or not. Being that close to your customer, understanding their needs and their expectations, what they really want. And then another one is building and then leveraging your operations capabilities, all your infrastructure, et cetera, to support your competitive priorities. So with some, it's going to be speed, so others, it's going to be cost, others, it's going to be customization. But whatever it is, and maybe it's going to be multiples of those, you have to have an operational capability that will allow you to deliver those competitive priorities. So here's an example, not from your textbook, but kind of from everyday life, of a competitive advantage. And many of you have noticed this. You know, when you walk into Mickey D's and you walk up to the counter to buy your Big Mac or whatever, typically if you look to the left, you'll see kind of a coffee station. And let me give you the background on this, because McDonald's has not always done this. Now, they had pretty good coffee. They've always had fairly good coffee. But really, they wanted to raise the bar and compete with Starbucks and those types of entities. So they got involved with a company called Distant Lands. It's a coffee company. Distant Lands was founded in 1982. It includes coffee farms, processing mills, green coffee training, roasting plants in North America. So it is a full-blown, full-fledged coffee company. They formed a partnership with McDonald's as they researched the McCafe concept. So McDonald's kind of found them, and they started kind of negotiating, and they came up with a partnership. So Distant Lands helped create the McCafe concept, and also they provide the coffee for the McDonald's chain. So McCafe launched in 14,000 restaurants in 2009. So obviously they have a competitive advantage over other companies because of their partnership with McDonald's, which is worldwide, is it not? I mean, you can find these things in all over Russia and South America and pretty much the Middle East. Anywhere you go, you can usually bump into a McDonald's restaurant. So just an example of a company that gained a competitive advantage over its competitors, mainly through having really good processes, but then a strategy of partnership with another brand name company. And by the way, they do have pretty good coffee. There's some things I don't like at McDonald's. Some of their hamburgers taste like cardboard, but you know, generally speaking, their coffee is pretty good. And now you know why. So you also have the idea of a sustainable competitive advantage. That means it's something not only that you start that allows you to stay ahead of the competition, but you can keep it up. It is sustainable. So we all hear about Walmart's falling prices. That's what the typical consumer hears. We see that in the commercials with their signage, et cetera. They're falling prices. And by the way, they are not blowing smoke. Many of you heard me say this. They are not blowing smoke. They're not just exaggerating when they say falling prices. Walmart has actually put a pencil to this, and they have calculated how much money you're going to save if you buy all of your stuff at Walmart compared to a competitor. That means your groceries and your clothes and your tires and everything else. So if you buy everything that you need at Walmart rather than going to a competitor, you will save somewhere around $2,000 a year. Now, that's quite a bit of money. You know, that's getting up close to $200 a month almost. That is the numbers that Walmart has arrived from their research about how. Now, that doesn't mean every item in Walmart is cheaper, but overall, if you buy all of your stuff from Walmart, you will save on average about $2,000 a year compared to going to another source. So why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons why Walmart offers these low prices. One of the things that a lot of people don't see and don't understand is their distribution system. Walmart has an incredibly efficient, low-cost distribution system. That is getting their products from A to B with as fewer resources as possible. Let me give you an example of that. Some of you since we're in hurricane season, you may have either heard the stories or you may possibly remember this, but the devastating Hurricane Katrina, that hit the Gulf Coast, especially New Orleans. It basically changed New Orleans forever. The levees broke and the city flooded, and it was horrific. If you've seen any kind of footage on that, it's just horrible, absolutely horrible. Well, anyway, back to Wally World and their distribution system. Hurricanes have a known path. They're not like tornadoes that just pop out of the sky and suddenly hit you. Usually you know days in advance that the hurricane is coming, so you can prepare. So when Katrina was being tracked through the Gulf Coast, Walmart decided that they would stage a kind of a rescue operation and send their 18-wheeler trucks loaded with things that people in a hurricane-devastated area would need. I saw footage of their command centers strategically placed throughout the South. They had 18-wheeler trucks loaded with water, with medicine, with food, with blankets. The engines were running. The diesel engines were running. All they were waiting for was the green light from the government that, yes, you can go in. The staging areas, their operations centers, it looked like NASA. Huge screens with people monitoring the truck traffic, making sure everything was ready, and they were just sitting there with engines running, waiting to go. And then finally, they said, okay, the storm has subsided, you can go in. And here is the kicker. You may be familiar with FEMA. FEMA is the federal government, the Federal Emergency Management Administration. That's who the federal government sends in response to a natural disaster. So if there's an earthquake, FEMA will go in. In this case, FEMA came to New Orleans. However, Walmart beat them there by 4 days. Walmart was on the ground, passing out water, blankets, medicine, etc., 4 days before FEMA got there. Some people have joked and said, really, we should maybe just outsource this to Walmart and let them take it over and do away with FEMA. And we could call it WEMA, the Walmart Emergency Management Administration, because they did such a better job than the federal government, because this is what they do. They are really good at this. A lot of people just don't understand what goes on in the background to make some of these companies as competitive as they are. It's not just that they buy in bulk, even though they do. They have systems that back in the infrastructure in the background that make them incredibly efficient. Another example here, Federal Express, based out of Memphis, Tennessee. FedEx in 2020 controlled almost 57% of the freight business worldwide. In other words, they are the 500-pound gorilla in the jungle, and they sleep wherever they want to because no one else is even close to them. They control 57% of the freight market. They have a competitive advantage simply because of the efficiency of their operations. Okay, so understanding customer wants and customer needs. Typically, this needs to be understood by segmenting customers based on unique wants and needs. So most companies do this. They will segment the market. They will take the whole market, slice it up into small pieces, and then focus. That's called market segmentation. They will focus on specific groups of people to find out what those little groups want. Now, there also is the concept here, understanding customers' wants and needs from the bottom of 60. about being close to the customer. They mention this kind of in the last paragraph, the bottom of 60. To correctly identify what customers expect requires being, quote, close to the customer. That means getting information from them, understanding what they like, what they don't like, etc. And they also mention here the two things that companies, you may see with companies, order qualifiers and order winners. Order qualifiers and order winners. Order qualifiers are just basic, they meet minimum performance, basic customer expectations, minimum performance required to stay in business. In other words, they're only doing what the customers the very basic thing. So if they're selling tires, all they do is sell you the tire and put it on your car. But then some companies practice being an order winner. Now, these are goods or sometimes services that feature performance characteristics that make them look different, that differentiate one customer benefit package from the other customer benefit package. So it helps to win the customer's business. So rather than just being the basics, these are the extras, the things that maybe the competitor does not offer. Now, let me give you an example of this. Marriott, being close to the customer. Here on the right, in the blue, that's the Marriott Austin. I got to stay there 2 or 3 years ago, paid for by Kilgore College. Couldn't afford it myself. I was there for some meetings. Very nice place. But Marriott is an international global chain. They have facilities in Rome and France and all over the world, Germany, South America, Thailand, Asia, etc. So Marriott, a very good company, very well run, they have this idea of being close to the customer. So their executive management staff, these are the very top level people, either in the hotels or in corporate, they require them every year to work a full day doing the basic jobs of the company. So some of them work as bellhops, kind of helping take bags to people's rooms. Some of them are wait staff in the restaurants. Some of them are bartenders. Some of them have to work the front desk. The reason they do that is they want these top level people to understand in a real nitty gritty way what actually is going on with our customer service personnel in delivering this service directly to the customer. Because it's really easy to lose touch, is it not? The higher up you go and the faster you go, you become distant from the customer. You don't really understand what they're doing. So Marriott's trying to reverse that trend. It says, okay, well, we'll fix that. We'll just put you out there and let you get a really good dose of this, and then you'll start making good decisions. So just a really interesting example there. And then in terms of order qualifiers and order winners, I like chicken. So I was thinking about this in terms of chicken restaurants. And I know there's a lot of them out there, but these are two that sometimes I go to. Popeyes and then also Chicken Express. Now, remember we said order qualifiers. They just give you the basics, right? So, I like the Popeyes chicken. I like their dirty rice. But when I go in there, I don't expect much more than that. In fact, my expectations are actually quite low because it seems like, especially with the ones that are in Longview, they can't get the order straight. They can't run the cash register. They make mistakes on the change. They just, I don't know what it is, but they're not managed real well at the store level, especially the people that deal with customers. So I kind of get what I expect. I get some chicken strips and some rice and maybe some beans or something, and that's what I pay for, and that's okay. It's an order qualifier. They're just doing the basics. But then there's Chicken Express. Now, their food does taste a little bit differently. It's not exactly the way Popeyes is. However, if you've noticed, and I've noticed this just recently, they give you a little bit more than you expected. So, for example, I went to Chicken Express the other day and ordered a basic meal with just one side, and then a dinner meal with two sides. I brought it home. My wife and I popped open the boxes. My gosh, there was enough chicken in there to feed a small army. Now, one of them said you can only get 3 pieces. The other one said you only get 4 pieces. I counted up, I think we had like 10 or 12 pieces. We both had a meal that night. I brought it for lunch for 2 days. We got like 4 or 5 meals out of that one purchase. Why? Because they put extra stuff in there. They're trying to make themselves look different from the competition. Does that work? Yes, it does. They look significantly different from the competition. So much so that I don't know if you've noticed, there is a Church's Chicken right down the street from Chicken Express in Longview. And what's going on at the Church's Chicken building? They're bulldozing it. It's being torn down because it's just kind of like they're gone. They're gone. They couldn't keep up. So the difference between order qualifiers and order winners. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about evaluating goods and services. So there's kind of 3 things that go on here with customers. Search attributes, experience attributes, and credence attributes. Let's define these and then take a look at some examples here. So search attributes, aspects of a good or service that a customer can determine prior to purchasing the product. So it's something that you can figure out before you even make the purchase. Experience attributes, aspects of a good or a service that can be discerned only after making the purchase or during the consumption or the use of the product. And then credence attributes, aspects of a good or service that the customer believes in and cannot be discerned even after making a purchase and consumption. So it's more of a subjective thing. So let's take a look at these 3. So search attributes, examples of that would be the color of a product, maybe the price of the product. You can know that ahead of time. The style, the smell. You walk into the bakery, you can smell the cookies, smell the bread. So that's a search attribute. You can know that ahead of time. But then you have experience attributes. And remember what we said about that. Aspects of a good or service that can be discerned only after making the purchase or during the consumption or the use. So that would be things like the friendliness of the staff, maybe the taste of the meal, maybe safety issues. You don't really know that ride at the amusement park is dangerous until you get on it, and then you kind of, oh my gosh, I'm not real sure this belt is going to hold me in. Now that they're slingshotting me around the amusement park here. And then another experience attribute might be fun. That might be positive or negative. You go to some event and you kind of go, well, that wasn't any fun. It was supposed to have been, but now that we've paid for it and it's over with, heck, I'm not doing that again. So that's the experience attribute. But then you also have the credence attribute. And remember, here's what we said about that. Aspects of a good or service that the customer believes in and cannot be discerned even after making a purchase and consumption. So maybe a mechanic's skill, a surgeon's skill, the advice, the knowledge of the tax advisor, the competency level of the stylist. You may not really get all of this until after it's all over, and then it's kind of subjective, right? As to whether or not they really have that or not. So 3 types of attributes, and these are all how we evaluate quality. We do it in stages. We don't do it all at one time. So this probably could be viewed a little easier in your textbook, which is the bottom of page 62. This is kind of a summary of what we've just said. how a customer will evaluate goods and services. So you'll notice here on the far left, you have high goods content right over here. Over here, you have high service content. So an example of a high goods content would be automobiles for purchase, furniture, jewelry. In the middle, you have restaurant meals right here, a vacation, a haircut, sporting events. Then on the far right, you have high service content, legal services, talking to an attorney, maybe having work out a contract, dentistry, automobile repair, estate planning. Those are all services, right? So now here's the big takeaway. On things that are more concrete, such as clothing and jewelry, you're typically very high in your search attributes. You want to evaluate all that stuff before it actually happens, right? So search attributes, the good or the service the customer can determine prior to purchase. So with automobiles, you can kick tires and do research and all of that stuff before you actually purchase the automobile. But then these things in the middle, like restaurants, vacations, etc., typically you have to experience that to be able to evaluate it, right? So you don't really know if that stylist is good until they cut your hair and then you have to wear a cap for a week. No. Then high service, and you'll notice things like auto repair or a medical treatment is high in credence attributes. Remember, by credence attributes, we said aspects of the good or service that the customer believes in and cannot be really discerned even after making a purchase and consumption. It's just something you believe in. Well, I think that's really a good surgeon. Well, I think this attorney is really honest, that sort of thing. Okay, let's move on and talk about competitive priorities. This is from page 63 and following. So competitive priorities, companies place a strategic emphasis on certain types of performance measures and their capabilities, their operational capabilities within the value chain. We've already talked about the value chain. That's that big picture, everything from inception until it goes into the hands of the final user. And here are the different types of competitive priorities. Cost is one. Quality is another one. Time is another one. Flexibility is another one. And then innovation. So let's kind of walk through and talk about each one of these. So the first one is cost. And this is basically the bottom of 63 in your book. These are the things that will help a firm gain a competitive advantage to have a reasonable cost. So how can you lower your cost? Well, you can lower your cost by having high productivity, that is producing a very large amount of something. Having high capacity utilization, that means if you have a plant that can crank out 1,000 cars a month, and you're only making 500, you have a very low capacity utilization. Well, you want to use a large amount of the capacity that you have. Another way to look at that is a restaurant. Let's just say your restaurant at any mealtime can seat 100 people. However, at your primary lunch and dinner, you only have maybe 60 people in there at the most. You're underutilizing your capacity. So typically you want to have high capacity utilization. And then achieving economies of scale. That's just the idea that things are cheaper by the dozen. If you can buy more of it and make more of it, you can lower the cost per unit. And then another issue is efficient design and operation of the supply chain. Efficient design and operation of the supply chain. An example of this is the bottom of 63. General Electric, for example, discovered that design itself determines 75% of its manufacturing cost. In other words, if it's a bad design on the front end, it's going to cost you a lot to make something. If you have a really good design, it's going to significantly lower your manufacturing cost. And then improvements in quality. Typically, that means you don't have a lot of rework, you don't have a lot of scrap or waste, and this sort of thing. So cost. The big company competes typically on a low-cost strategy. So they have big pens and big cigarette lighters, big shavers. They're kind of known as being disposable, right? You buy them, you use them. When it's used up, you throw it away and you get another one because they're so inexpensive. So they actually compete on using a low cost strategy and volume, and that works. So here is the interlinking of quality and profitability. Now this is very interesting, talking about quality. This is over on page 64. And the exhibit, which I'm showing you, exhibit 3.2, is the bottom of your page 65. So here's the idea. You improve the quality of your design. So this is the, the thinking architects, right? The people that are that have the imagination to visualize a product before you actually even make it. And you just start to design how this product is going to be made and what it's going to look like. So if you have better quality of your design, what's going to happen? You're going to have a higher perceived value of the product. In other words, the customer is going to look at that and say, wow, that phone is really slick. That car is really attractive, or that garment looks really good. That's the high perceived value. Where does that come from? It comes from design. And what happens? You have increased market share. That simply means you're getting more customers. Customers are going to defect from the competitor, and they're going to come over to you. And what results from improved quality, higher perceived value, and increased market share? Well, you can raise your prices because people want what you have. So that means you have higher prices. If you have higher prices, what does that lead to? Increased revenue. That's the money that comes into the top of the company. And then what does that result in? Higher profitability. In other words, after you pay all your expenses, you have a lot of money left over. So that's the link between quality and profitability. So here's an example of this. The Apple Corporation. So they have all the pieces of this. They have very high quality design of their products, right? They just look different, they feel different, they operate differently from their competitors. So that gives them high value. People perceive these as being of high quality. What does that do? It increases their market share. They get more customers. And then what does that allow them to do? Charge a significantly higher price for their product. So for example, and this is an old one, this iPhone right here, which I have, and it's not even a new one. I think this thing at the time I got it retail for like $1,000. $1,000. So you're walking around with $1,000 handheld interactive television in your pocket. Who would have thought? Well, people are willing to pay that price, right? And what does that do for the company? It increases their revenue. They have more money coming in at the top. And what does that allow them to do? It makes them highly profitable. And then they can take that profit, they can plow it back into research and development, They can pay their employees more. It just that rising tide within the company floats all the ships, right? Just makes them significantly better. And by the way, just as a little side note, we talk about the economic crash of 2008, which was now, 12 years ago, and then the Great Recession, which followed it, which we have kind of come out of that. But during the Great Recession that followed the crash of 2008, Apple Corporation had more cash in the bank than the US government. Just let that one sink in for a minute. They are a highly profitable company. They command high prices for their products. Why? It backs all the way up to design and value. People are willing to pay $1,000 for some glass and plastic because it is better than any competitor. It can do things differently, security, etc. That's true. They did have more in the bank than the U.S. government, cash in the bank during the Great Recession. Okay, let's move on. Time, another competitive priority. Time. It is an important source of competitive advantage. Customers demand quick responses. They want short waiting times. They also want consistency in performance. So speeding up the processes in supply chains improves customer response. People like you better because they can get it faster. So there are reductions that go on, accomplished by streamlining and then simplifying your processes, and also looking at all the pieces of the value chain. This drives improvements in quality and cost and productivity. So here's a really good example of time, or I translated that also into speed. You may have not heard of this company before. It's called Veterinary Pharmacies of America. It is an online medical vet supply pharmacy based in Houston, Texas. So here's how I ran across this. We had a cat that has now gone on to kitty heaven, thank goodness. But the cat was up in her years. She was, I think before she died, she was 17, 18 years old. She'd been around a long time. But obviously, old cats develop disabilities and syndromes and health issues. So there was a medication that she needed, that the cat needed. But it wasn't just a pill. It wasn't one of these things where you can just, go to the vet and they sell you a bottle of pills. No. Now, this was a specialized medicine that had to be compounded. What that means is you had to have a pharmacy that would actually make the medicine. You can't just buy it from a manufacturer, okay? Now, I don't know if you've ever had to deal with a compounding pharmacy. They're not on every block. CVS is not one. Walgreens is not one. The big chains are not one. You have to go to a smaller type facility that is called a compounding pharmacy. That means there are pharmacists that actually mix the chemicals and put it all together in the back. This can get really expensive. To my knowledge, there's only one or two of those anywhere in the greater East Texas area. I'll not name the one that I dealt with, but they were tray expensive and they were always screwing up. I would go in there and they didn't have the order right. They would have the order, they would charge me wrong. They would lose the order. They were just absolutely horrible, but I didn't have anywhere else to go. It's kind of like, well, if we want the cat to live, we got to give him the medicine. And this is the only place we can get the medicine. And then somehow, I don't really remember how this started, I heard about this online pharmacy organization called Veterinary Pharmacies of America in Houston, Texas. And I got their phone number and I called them. I had the vet send the prescription to Houston. And then once I became established as a customer, I was amazed at their operation. You can order online or by phone. When you call, they will answer within 3 rings, and it's a real person. It's not, some automated system. I started timing them. I was just curious because I thought, these people are really fast. I started timing them. How long would it take by the time they answered the phone until the order was complete? They could finish it in usually 40, 45 seconds, maybe 50 seconds. In other words, they already had the prescription, they already had my credit card number, they already had my address. All they needed to know was that I needed some more medicine for Kitty. And boy, they were good. They never messed up. It was always correct. They were cheaper than the pharmacies around here. I remember I called them one Monday. It was on my front doorstep Wednesday morning. Just incredible speed. Okay, that's an example of time and how time is important in your delivery of your services. What about flexibility? Flexibility. This is manifested in mass customization. Now, we've talked about mass customization. Typically, in the old days, you either had something custom made or you had mass production of products. So mass production of products, everything looks exactly alike. Customized means it fits the specific criteria of an individual customer. But what we have seen emerge is mass customization, the ability to make goods and services that global customers require at any volume and at any time. So an example of this would be Levi's. Levi's will cut to your exact measurements a pair of jeans. And they'll do this for anybody at a competitive price. That is mass customization. Now, what does that require? That requires flexibility to be able to pull that off. That is one of the new emerging competitive priorities. And then we have innovation. This is another one. This is over on your page 66, innovation. The discovery and the practical application or commercialization of a device or a method or an idea that differs from existing norms. So innovative companies focus on outstanding product research, design, development, high product quality, the ability to modify their facilities to produce new products frequently. Now, here is a classic example of innovation. And you've heard me talk about this company because I think they're a really good company, a 3M Corporation. 3M, they're the adhesives people. They make sticky notes. They make the command strips, those little things that, if you need to hang a picture, you don't want to mess up the wall. You get the command strip, you stick it on the wall, it sticks there, you hang the picture. If you want to move it, you just peel it off the wall and voila, guess what? It doesn't mess up the paint, right? Because of the adhesive that they have. So the lifeblood of 3M Corporation is new products. So here's how that translates into their strategy. Every division is expected to gain 25% of the sales from products that it did not have 5 years ago. In other words, they're constantly doing research and development to come out with brand new stuff. And the expectation is 25% of their sales have to come from something they didn't even have 5 years ago. So new products are just the lifeblood of that company. Okay, so that takes us up to about page 66. And then the big next piece of the chapter here is on operations management and strategic planning. I think I'm going to save that for next time. So let me